Good morning. I think I stand between you and lunch, so I'll try and make it very quick. As introduced, my name is Lanre Bamisebi. I'm the Executive Director for Digitalization and IT for Access Corporation. Access Corporation is an holding company that has a bank, a pension company, insurance company, a digital lending company. We lend about maybe a million to 8 million customers on a weekly basis, and also a payment company that does switching across different countries in Africa. And I sit on top of the technology for all these organizations. So, I think I have a very good view of how things work. And I've been opportuned to work in across 22 countries in Africa. Access Corporation, we have a bank in UK, which is the largest retail bank by an African company in the UK, and it started just about 2-3 years ago, and it's still growing. So technology for us is the heart of the whole organization. So what I'm talking to you today is what you all know, the opportunities in digital transformation, and I'll be focusing more around Africa because that's where I do most of my trade. So I just want to give you the landscape. In Access, we have about 62 million customers to date, about 35 million active customers on a monthly basis. We are in 17 countries, including the UK, US, France, Kenya, Zambia, Nigeria, and the rest of them. As we speak, the bank has about $15.5 billion in total assets. And the GDP of the Nigerian GDP actually, in terms of the digital aspect of it, 10% is about $37 billion. So, that gives you an idea of what opportunity there lies in. So, I will start with the evolution of digital banking. Digital banking didn't start today. Like the last panelist concluded that things have been evolving over time. This is the history and how it's been going. You all know this, so I'll just jump into 2026 and 2016 and the future. And today, just one bank, we do about 190 transactions per second, about 11K transactions per minute, and about 12.5 million transactions per day, right? So if you look at things and income only, right, even if you earn about, well, unfortunately in Nigeria, the Naira has been devaluated, but let's assume that was pounds. So that means the bank will make, if it charges about maybe half a pound on a transaction, it will be earning about £6 million on a daily basis. That tells you there's a lot of opportunities that lies in Africa. Now, will I surprise you that it's easier if you try to import something from London today? It's easier than importing something from Ghana that is just, like 20 minutes from Nigeria, right? I do inter-country moves. So when I want to travel to the UK, it's easy. Just jump on British Airways and 6 hours later you're here. If I need to get to some countries that are like a few miles away from Nigeria, it's like entering your train. It stops at every drop. You enter in Nigeria, it drops in Togo, it drops in Niger. You're not dropping, it's picking passengers. And you're wondering, and it takes you about 10, 15 hours to get to, so those are some of the challenges that we have in Africa. Now, the other challenge we have is cut across every organization, even the Barclays of this world. I speak with the CIO for Bank of America, Morgan Stanley. They all have the same problem, and that's legacy. Now, there's legacy in the system. If you see, most of the big banks are still using their legacy core banking, right? Despite the fact that there's a lot of SaaS, they hesitate to do that because, like I mentioned yesterday, the people still making the decision are legacy. What I mean by that is that they're still very old and they're very risk adverse, Now, that also cut across regulation, right? So the same people who are there are also the people making the regulation. So it makes it a very difficult thing to happen. Now, when you talk about legacy, when I joined Access and I said I need to get rid of legacy, the CEO told me, oh, okay, yeah, we can change all the system. I said, no. There are people too that are legacy. There are some people that are used to doing things in a certain way, so it's difficult to change them. Now, it's even worse if they've been doing that thing and they've been very good at it. They have been successful at it. They've grown 15.5 billion asset doing the same thing. Now, you come and tell them to do it differently. It's going to be a struggle, right? And so that is the challenge you have to face around legacy. There's legacy system. We're talking about legacy core banking. The core banking that most of these banks use, including Access today, is such that when we want to do an upgrade, it's like preparing for it's almost like you're going for a war. You have to, the preparation, the board meeting, it's like one of those events that happened every 4 years, and you're hoping that, by the time these people want to upgrade, I will have moved to another bank. You don't want to be caught in a bank that is upgrading, because I recently, before I left the country, one of the biggest banks in Nigeria did an upgrade, and they've been down for like 15 hours, and it's so bad that if you go on Twitter, there are so many content about them being down. So I'm wondering how many years it's going to take them to unturn that. Now, you see, the thing is, so I've been, my career, I've moved like 4 different banks, and for some reason, as soon as I join, they want to do an upgrade. So it's so sad that, I have to continue. Upgrade for me is like, what are we talking about again? Because no matter how good your career is, an upgrade can limit it. Okay? So that's how bad the legacy core banking is. And you guys are here talking about the SaaS and all that, but again, there are those challenges as well in terms of would people want to really trust, because remember, banking is a trust game, right? You put your money in banking because you trust them. So I will say something. Access Bank is one of those that you call, in quote, a legacy bank. Is old. It's over 25 years, right? So there are newer banks. I won't name them for obvious reasons, but these banks do things better. They are very good. They are very efficient. They use SaaS. They use all those things. But I asked somebody a question one time. Do you have an account in those? Oh, yeah, I do. That's what I use these days. Okay. If I gave you $2 million now, will you put it in that bank? No. You get what I mean? Now, that's where the trust comes in. Now, you will trust the older banks with the real money. And so when you now look at it, the percentage of people that have that real money still use the old banks. You understand what I mean? So, if I can't imagine you going to meet Warren Buffett and say, put your account in sterling. He's going to just be, what are you talking about? Right? So that is what, you guys have to face. Those are the challenges you have to face. Now, the other challenge is cybersecurity. In Africa, and I think generally, cybersecurity is a very big problem. I mentioned yesterday that in Nigeria alone, I know about Nigeria, I know about Kenya, the fraud rate in Kenya banking grows about 25% year on year. Now, the reason is because it's a small country, 52 million people. However, the banking inclusion in Kenya is almost equivalent to that of UK, because they have what we call M-Pesa, right? So everybody does banking in Kenya. Now, because of that, we call some people the vulnerables. Now, these are your mom, or dad. These are people who understand very little about banking. Now, so this is a very typical scenario. So they go into the bank to do something, whatever it is, with their walking stick. They just get there, finish their transaction. And as soon as they're coming out, they get a phone call. Hello, madam. Now, they speak to them in their languages. So they feel, you just left this bank. Aduma, oh, yes. Did they give you a card? Oh, yes. Okay, I'm calling from that bank. What is the PIN that they gave you? And they will literally just give them the PIN, because they don't know better, and the old elderly people are more trusting. So that actually, make it very difficult for them to manage cybersecurity and fraud crime in those countries. The same happens in Nigeria and across Africa as well. So cybersecurity is a very important thing and is a major challenge in digitalization in Africa. The other one is customer trust. I think I've already mentioned that. Then there's complex regulatory framework. I think the two panelists, made a lot of comment around that. Regulatory is a good thing, and sometimes it can be an impediment. And I can relate with them. So if you look at most of the central banks in Africa, most of the positions are political, right? You hardly see very intelligent men, women go into the central bank in Africa. Most of the time is the cousin of the president's cousin, is the wife of the president's brother, right? So these guys, they have the political power, but mentally and adding real value becomes a problem for some of them. So that's a major, challenge within digitalization in Africa. And sometimes across, it's also in the UK as well. When the UK, at least the UK has, to a great extent, they're a bit more proactive compared to so many other countries. Now, yesterday I mentioned that while we are still talking about moving to the cloud, right? So we go to Tanzania, set up a bank, everything was fine. We want to run cloud. Then we had our first meeting with the central bank. We want our data in Tanzania. You get what I mean? The South Africa want their data in South Africa. The Nigerian government want their data in South Africa. So no matter how much you talk to them about the importance of cloud, they still want to see their data. Now, when you argue with them, they will tell you, every country has a sovereignty, right? And I mentioned yesterday, the war in Ukraine and Russia. If the data for the largest bank in Ukraine is sitting on the cloud in Russia, everybody there will have lost their job the very day the war started, right? So we don't know, all these men really know. They have tempers. And as we grow older, those tempers are getting shorter. They wake up one day and they decide, you know what, I want this country, and before you know it, there is war. So how do you now begin to trust that, a big company like a regulatory firm in America, in the UK, do you want to put your data on the AWS cloud? And, might not, Kamala or Trump comes in, they both have tempers. And one day, there is some fight on Twitter. And so, okay, I'm shutting down your data, and there goes your bank. So those are some of the things that, funny as it may sound, it can actually happen in reality. And also remember, war today starts cyber, right? It starts cyber. First thing they do, they want to stifle you of information, and once that happens, you can imagine how it can end. Now, the other one is talent gap. Now, this one is very weird. It's strange. So in Nigeria, last year, you have 60 developers, right? And you wake up, you tell them, so today we are going to develop a complex solution, and they tell you, yes. We will start it, we'll finish it in 3 months. Then you go to London for this training, then you come back. I'm like, oh, guys, yeah, so where are we? Like, where is everybody? where is the US? It's gone to Canada. Ooh. What about the AI guy? He's gone to the UK. Okay? That is the reality, right? So we lose staff on a daily basis. So it's more difficult to get staff. And the ones that you have, they now demand. Their demand is unbelievable, right? I spoke to a young graduate. He's not even a graduate. He's like 21. I want him to come and do some AI for me. And we started having conversation. And I said, oh, you're 21. How many years experience do you have? About 24. I said, are you crazy? How can you be 26 and you have 24 years experience? What are you talking about, dude? Oh, he was like, I started writing code when I was 3. I was like, oh, really? And by the time I was 6, I wrote my first language. And all of a sudden, I sat quiet and I listened. And I hired him. And I was paying him what, when I was 40, I wasn't earning, right? Just because I needed that skill. You understand what I mean? So it's a very difficult thing. It's a talent war out there. Even in the UK, I'm sure you guys are having your own fair share of it. And this, to make it worse, Gen Z, Gen Y, they are very eccentric. You know, I remember back then, when we want to move from one job to the other, you tell your mom, you tell your dad, you tell your cousin, oh, can I move? They tell you, oh, that company, their father used to know your father, you can't just leave. These ones, they're on Twitter, leave your job and start digital marketing. I'm going to start digital marketing. And I'm like, dude, have you thought through this thing? Done. Can't you see Mark Zuckerberg? Can't you see? Okay, then you'll be like, okay, go. So it's difficult to actually hold on to talent. Then there is an inability to scale. Now, this is very important to you guys because I notice most of the people here are to be vendors for banks. What scares me the most is not that you have the skill to do my job. Most of them do. I want to integrate with Bazaar. I want to integrate with CBAS and all of them. But you see, the problem is when it comes to scaling. So I have a company that does my USSD. USSD is like, I'm not sure you have it in the UK. It's a way of banking, you know, text banking, right? And it's very, very popular in Nigeria and Africa as well because they don't use the, in quote, the big phones. So you can deal with the cheaper phones. So it's very inclusive. A lot of people use it. We do about 14 million transactions on it on a monthly basis. Now, so we started with this company, not a big company, but very small, but they were very good at it. So we started integrating with them. Then we scaled, right, from maybe 2 million customers per day to about 12 million customers. The scale at which we scale, because we are a bank, we could easily order a few servers, pay for it. And you tell the guy, dude, you know, you're failing too often because you're not able to move my transaction at the rate I'm moving them. And he's we are trying to get funds, we are trying to do this, and your customers are complaining. Now, so that is some of the problem we have with, you know, with smaller vendors. Sometimes is, oh, I need the resource to come and help me here, and all their resources are somewhere, they are tied here and there, or maybe there's only one man. In fact, in a particular case, it's only the MD that understands the system. So anytime I have a problem, if I'm going to do an upgrade, I'll call him, dude, are you traveling in the next 2 weeks? He will tell me, no, okay, you know what, I need to know you, I need to see you. You know, I need to see him physically before I can do an upgrade. That's how bad it is sometimes with these smaller organizations. The other one is FX risk. You know, this is prevalent in Africa. When I got back from East Africa to Nigeria, dollar was about $1 was 450. 450 to a dollar. Today is about 1,600. Now, so you can imagine the effect on that on everything, right? So basically what that means is that your IT budget just escalates about 400%, right? Because of the devaluation. Then, of course, there's the problem of internet and power connectivity. Internet, you know, you might take it for granted in some Western world, but in some countries in Africa, it's still a major problem. And power as well. Even in South Africa, which, you know, they've had good power for a very long time. Now they are struggling with it. And as controversial as it sounds, when I hear things around immigration, I kind of understand where they're coming from. Most countries are built and developed for a particular population, right? So Lagos, for example, was built to accommodate 7 million people. So the sewages, the electric lines, the roads is for 7 million. Guess how many we are now? 25 million. And there has been no improvement in those things. So what do you have? Chaos, right? So these countries understand that, and they're trying to make sure they're aligned. Then the other thing is, so those are the major challenges. Then if you look at the challenges, you also need to look at the opportunities. There are loads of opportunity. I've just mentioned it. If you're good at anything, just do it in Africa, and you have the population for it. There is a huge population there. We have, like I mentioned, 64 million customers. A bank just came into Nigeria 4 years ago. Today they have 52 million customers, right? You cannot have, that's almost the population of the UK, right? So if you have one of them doing a transaction per day, that's a lot of money. So there's a lot of people in Africa. But, financial inclusion is still a thing. If you can find a way to include people in financials, that's also a huge opportunity. One of the ones that is so unbelievable, but is a fact, is that today, money transfer across Africa is still a huge problem, right? It's easier. I can transfer to my cousin in the UK, in Manchester, like this. But if you have a friend in South Africa, it's not possible, right? So that is a huge opportunity. If somebody can actually build a switch that connects the whole of Africa. Now, technologically, 4 of us can sit down and do that. But the political aspect of it is where the problem is, right? Because I don't want to go into that. Then scalability and flexibility. We had a very robust conversation yesterday around cloud, the importance of cloud. And, don't get me wrong, cloud is very important. In my bank, we are doing 60% cloud. But by the time you start doing volumes, right, the cost of cloud becomes a problem. Now, I've read organizations, big organizations that are churning out a lot of transactions who have gone on the cloud. After the CapEx become OpEx, for the first 2 years, they are okay. Then all of a sudden, the bills start piling in. And they are saying, you know what, perhaps, can you start reverse engineering some of those things back to the premises? So that's one of the things. But so you have to be mindful of how to put cloud and prem, how to mix the two together so that you don't, overdo cloud, and you don't do it. You do it in such a balance that you can take advantage of it. Now, what is really happening now in banking? There are still people, believe it or not, that still need to go to the branch, right? No matter how you try. Some of them, they are old people. It's a Tuesday. They have nothing planned in their diary. Then they remember, oh, there's a bank across the road. So they go there and they sit down just to talk to the people there. So we still have those people. In our branch today in Nigeria, we still do about 50% of our transaction in the branch. Now, these are people that they use mobile phone. The excuse they'll give you, mobile. My cousin money was taken on the mobile. So because of fraud, some of them will never, move to use mobile or digital. Most of them will just tell you they would rather they want to come to the branch. Some of them just want to talk to the customer. So that also makes it difficult for it to be full cloud. I'll give you a scenario now. So we have about 750 branches in Nigeria, my bank, Access Bank. Now, what that means is that if we have to make all those branches, connect to their core banking on the cloud, right? Yet, their digital app is on-prem. And remember, everybody, Azure will sell you the express route, right? But you are still going to have a problem when the brick hit the road, right? And I'm telling you that because it's something that I've experienced. Now, I remember when I was in consulting, when I was in Accenture, I had a MD that used to tell me, you can tell me how to get to Manchester from London, right? Draw the graph for me, tell me where the bumps are. But it's a different ball game if I've actually driven from London to Manchester, right? So have been opportune. Now, it's not something that everybody gets to do, to be able to run with 65 million customers and try them on cloud and put them back on-prem. So I tell you, the journey, as beautiful as it sounds, it needs to be done very carefully. Else, you end up spending too much money on OpEx in running this transaction. So it has to be a balance of the two. So what we do, we have a multi-cloud. We use AWS, we use Azure, Microsoft Azure, and of course, we have our own private cloud, which we have built. So some things we put on the private cloud, some we put on the public cloud. So that's the way we've been able to do it. So I'll go to the next point. We just took some of the successful metrics for most of the businesses. I think the fintech companies in Nigeria moved about 200% in sourcing funds. The last 4 or 5 years, there's massive amount of investment coming into fintech in Nigeria. So you have fintech for everything. Everything you want to do, there's a fintech for it in Nigeria. If you want to cut your nails, there's a fintech that cuts nails. If you want to do barbing, there's a fintech that barbs. It's unbelievable. There is nobody. I left the country as a CIO for one of the largest banks. 3 years, I came back. Everybody that was in my organization reporting to me, they are now co-founders. And they all tell you, oh, we just got the fund, 1 billion. They just keep throwing the figures. I'm like, what the hell is happening here? Until we decided doing the bidder. Then you realize that it's not just a valuation game, right? But again, people now want to have profit. They want to see the transactions, right? Valuation is so easy to achieve. And I will end with a story when there was this Israeli guy. We went for a venture summit, and he was talking to you about valuation, how companies do their valuation, and he gave a very good example that stuck with me. So I would share with you as I end my presentation. So he said, an Israeli club, there's this game they play, the best in Europe, the best in Africa, everywhere they patch them together to play. So that year, Barcelona was won European Champions League, and the Israeli company won for their own Asia. So immediately they saw they were like, oh, it's a done deal. They are going to lose. Then all of a sudden, in Israel, they started talking about their foundation, how they came to be, how the Israelis are everything. Then they started showing the players, training daily, waking up to carry leave, to do all those things. Then we said, hey, wait, there's a possibility that we might just win Barcelona. And he was there as a gambling man, a very good investor. He said, no, he said to them, no, it's not going to happen. Then all of a sudden, the pressure was so much, everybody kept, the belief was so much that I felt, we might be able to win them. Then we were okay, fine, I will bet. Maybe a draw. Anyway, it was 7-0. Barcelona. You see, that's what happens sometimes when you have, valuation, you value, I believe, but the reality is, it was 7-0. All right, so basically, these are some of the things I'm talking about Access Bank now. 70 million account opened. We opened about 1.5 million account on a monthly basis. Sometimes we do about 11,000 transactions per minute. So it's a lot of, there's a lot of opportunities in Africa. And for core banking, for AI, it's like a gold mine, right? So there's a lot happening there, but there's still a lot that can happen. A lot of people are very skeptical about the African market, but I tell you, those who have dared to go in, understand that it's almost like it's a virgin market. The competition is not as high as you have it in Europe, so it's a very good market. And in conclusion, I think like the lady asked, will AI replace human being? I don't know. Maybe if it does, I probably won't be here then. But one thing I know for sure, managers and executives that uses AI will take over the job of those that don't. Right? That one I know very sure. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Blessing. First, I need to appreciate Larry for the insightful section. It's really drilled down to the core of our business. So I work with one of the legacy banks, and we've implemented a core banking that his company is also using at the moment. We've implemented a Flex Cube. Still struggling with it anyway, after about 7 years. So I understand deeply how that is for us. And most likely after this, we'll have more conversation. But my question is regarding data. As we know, there are data in silos in Nigeria. Everyone has data, but we still have difficulty in accessing financial services, especially credit. So as easy, or in quote, as easy as credit rating could be, we're struggling deeply with. So Access has data, my bank has data, this one has data. Everybody's just trying to smuggle clients into them, and we have multiple loans, multiple credits from everybody. And at the end of the day, the client that is financially included has take out all the money from the bank, he is now excluded. So there's financial inclusion, we've pushed in financial inclusion, but they are going back to being excluded. So they are keeping back their money at home because they have issues with people taking money from their account, like their daughter or son also trying to use their account to collect loans from other platforms. So just data everywhere. How are we looking for a way to collaborate with government? I understand that that's what NIPS was supposed to do, but I'm not sure if, not that I'm not sure, they are not doing that. Anyway, so how are we making collaboration with the government to ensure that we are able to maximize the data that we have in Nigeria for better services being provided to customers?
All right, thank you. Very, very brilliant question. I sit on the board of NIPS. That makes it even worse. So the problem is, Africa is complex, very complex. But if you understand it, it's very easy. Now, the problem with data is, before NIPS, in the UK, you have your NI, right? And your NI is unique to you. Now, in Nigeria, there is NIN, which is also peculiar to you. Now, to a great extent, there is a credit bureau. So those things are working, not as they should, but you see, the major problem, as in majorly the problem in Africa, is consequent management. That is always a problem. So I'll give you an example. Boye, for example, drives in Nigeria, and you're about to take a turn, right? You're going, and you miss your turn. In the UK, missing that turn will cost you another 30 minutes, especially if you're on congestion road, right? So you miss it, but you continue going. In Nigeria, you will reverse, and turn. Because you understand that what's the worst that can happen? A policeman will stop you, and you give him a tip, and you go scot-free. So it's consequent management. It's the same problem everywhere, even in credit. I will tell you, the largest lender in Nigeria is one of the richest men in the country. What do you want to do about it? So you see people take a loan. All the same symptoms I mentioned about people leaving the country. In Nigeria now, in most of it, even Kenya, I worked in 22 of them. When they've applied for visa, gotten a job with Morgan Stanley, they've packed their loads, they have their bags, the last thing they do? They take a loan. So they go to the bank, they take a loan, and they move. Now, there is not enough relationship or collaboration between the European countries, the American countries, and the Nigerian banks to be able to retrieve back the money, right? So it's all about managing consequences. And, some of the things that the new government is trying to do is to try and see how they can manage consequences. It's not as if the processes are not there. They are there, but it's just that when people default, what do you do? So, for example, you own a bank, so what can you do? But in other countries, they can arrest you. Most of African countries don't have that kind of law that makes it punitive to do those things.